channel. Today I have a really fun video. I'll be sharing 8 DIY farmhouse style Christmas ornaments. Each ornament was really easy to do and only took a few minutes. I really hope that you guys enjoy today's video. Now let's get right into today's projects. For ornament number 1, I'm making an embroidery hoop orb ornament. For this project, I'm using two 3-inch embroidery hoops, and these ones I picked up from Michael's. And I'm first unscrewing the top screw on the hoops so that I can take them apart. I'm taking both of the hoops apart, but I'm only going to be using one entire hoop and then the inside portion of the second hoop. Once I have them all taken apart, I'm then painting them with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. I did the outside of all the hoops and then also the inside ring of all of the hoops. Once those were all painted and the paint dried, I then wanted them to look a little bit rustic. So I took my folk art chalk paint in the color Java and I dry brushed that color on all 3 of my hoops. Next, I'm putting all of my hoops together. I'm placing what would be normally the 2 inner hoops inside of what's normally the outer embroidery hoop ring. And I'm just spacing those out to where they make an orb shape and then screwing the top screw tight so that it holds everything in place. And then to secure it a little bit more, I'm using a little bit of hot glue on the bottom portion of my orb. To add some detail to my ornament, I'm using this really pretty striped ribbon that I picked up from Dollar General, and I'm making a really simple bow. And then for the tail ends of my bow, I'm just cutting those in a diagonal shape. And because I wanted to add a pop of green to my ornament, I'm using some of this really pretty greenery off of one of these stems that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. I just cut the greenery pieces down small so they'll fit on the top of my ornament, and then I'm hot gluing them right underneath the screw portion of my hoop. Once I had that on, then I just used some hot glue on the back side of my bow and glued that right in the middle of my greenery. Next, I'm creating my hanger for my ornament. I took a long piece of jute and I wrapped it around the top of that screw on my embroidery hoop, and then I just tied that in a knot so that it would stay around that screw, and then just made the pieces of jute long enough to be a hanger to hang on the tree. I could have stopped there, but I decided I wanted to add some different colors of greenery to the top of my ornament. So I'm taking some of these darker ones, also from Hobby Lobby, and just hot gluing those small pieces right above my bow. Once I had those other greenery pieces on, I decided I wanted to add some pine cones. So I'm then adding some of these mini pine cones from Dollar Tree right above my bow as well. And this is my embroidery hoop orb ornament all finished. I think this one turned out really cute. It was super easy to make, and I just love the white ivory color. It really pops against the green on the tree. Now moving into ornament number 2, I'm making a rag wreath ornament. For this one, I'm using some of this burlap fabric that I had left over in my craft stash, and I'm cutting it down into strips that are about 2 inches thick. They don't have to be exactly 2 inches, just as long as you're somewhere around 2 inches. And then once I have those all cut out, I'm then cutting them in half, and then they ended up being about 4 or 5 inches in length, just as long as they are long enough to tie around a hoop. Then I'm also using some of this like burgundy checked fabric, also from Hobby Lobby, and I'm cutting that down. These ones were about 1.5 inches to 2 inches in thickness, and I'm just cutting those in half to be about 4 or 5 inches in length, just like I did with the burlap fabric. Once I had them all cut, I decided to just use this 3-inch embroidery hoop that I had from the last project. I had the outside of the ring still left over, so what better way than to use it for this? And I'm starting by tying all of the fabric that I just cut off around my hoop. I started with the checked fabric and I tied that around my hoop and made a knot and then pressed it up towards the screw. And then I did another piece of the checked fabric. So 2 pieces of the checked fabric tied around the hoop, and then I did a strip of the burlap fabric tied around the hoop. I then continued that same step, rotating between the 2 over and over again until I had my entire embroidery hoop covered with my fabric. My fabric ended up being a little bit longer than I would have liked it to be when it was tied around my hoop, so I just used some scissors and cut those strips of fabric down a little bit and just made it look a little bit more neat. Next, I'm taking these wood beads that spell out the word joy, and I'm stringing them onto a piece of jute. Once I have all 3 letters strung on, I want to make sure that they don't move around and they stay in place. So I'm tying a knot right next to the letter J, and then also another knot right next to the letter Y. I'm then attaching this to the center of my ornament. I flipped my ornament over and I placed hot glue on each side so that the words joy are going across the middle of my ornament. And then I wanted to add some pop of greenery. You guys know I love using little pieces of greenery on almost all of my projects. So I used the lighter green color greenery and then also this darker color. And then I'm just hot gluing those to the very top of my ornament right next to the screw of the embroidery hoop. And to attach them, I used hot glue. I'm then adding this metal star, which I believe was from a 4th of July Dollar Tree sign, and I just had it left over in my craft stash. I'm putting hot glue on the back side of it, and then I'm placing that over top of the greenery in the top center. Once I had that on, the very last step was to add a hanger, so I used a double piece of jute, wrapped it around the top screw of that embroidery hoop, and then just made those jute pieces for the length of my hanger. And this is what my rag wreath ornament looks like all finished. What I love about this one is you can use any kinds of fabric that you have left over in your stash to make a really pretty ornament, or if you wanted to do this as a wreath, you also could do that as well. Now ornament number 3, I'm making a Season's Greetings ornament. For this one, I'm using one of these unfinished ornament shaped wood pieces from Michaels. It did come in a pack of 5 and it was only 99 cents for all 5 of them. I started by painting the ornament shape with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and I only had to do 1 coat of this paint. Once the paint was all dry, I then decided I wanted to use one of these mini ornaments from this pack of ornaments that I got from Walmart. I'm using this one here that says Season's Greetings, and it had the hole already on one side, but I wanted to add another hole. So I'm just making sure I'm putting my drill right in the same spot as the hole on the other side, and I'm drilling a hole right next to the word Season's Greetings. Then I'm taking some of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree and I'm cutting it down to where it will go around my ornament, and then just cutting it down even more to where it will be right behind that little ornament that says Season's Greetings. And then wrapping my cut piece of burlap around the front of my ornament, and then I'm hot gluing the 2 ends of that along the back side using some hot glue. Next, I'm adding some of these mini Christmas bells from Dollar Tree. I'm only going to be using 2 of them. I'm taking 1 bell and stringing it on a small piece of jute, and then I'm running that piece of jute through one of the holes on my little Season's Greeting ornament, and then tying a knot around the side of it so that the bell stays in place. I'm then taking another one of those bells and stringing it onto a second piece of jute. I'm then taking that jute, putting it through the other hole on the other side of my Season's Greeting little ornament, and then doing another knot on that side. And then hot gluing that Season's Greetings ornament right over top of my burlap in the center of my ornament, and then hot gluing the 2 ends of the jute along the back side. This ornament did not have a hole in the top of it, so I'm using my drill to drill a hole in the very top of my ornament so that I can string a piece of jute through that to make my hanger. I'm using a piece of jute and just tying a knot for the length that I want my hanger to be. Then to add some detail to the front of my ornament, I'm using some of these dark greenery pieces. I'm cutting them down so that they'll fit better onto my ornament, and then I'm using some hot glue to attach them on the top and the bottom of my ornament. And this is my Season's Greetings ornament all finished. Super easy to do, very minimal, and I think this goes perfect with my farmhouse rustic theme that I have for this year. Moving on into ornament number 4, I'm making a mini bucket ornament. For this one, I'm using one of these mini white buckets. These can be found in like the wedding section at Dollar Tree, and they come in a 2-pack. And I'm also using some of these wood stems from Dollar Tree. I'm starting by placing some of the wood stems into the bucket. I just kind of wanted to get a feel for which shaped stems that I wanted to use in my bucket. So when I got them all figured out and how I wanted to have them placed, I started hot gluing them all together in the inside of my bucket. Then I'm adding some greenery pieces around all of those wood stems in the inside of my bucket. To attach them, I just place hot glue on the bottom of the stems and then press them down onto the wood stems. I'm also using some darker greenery pieces and doing the same thing, just hot gluing those down around my wood stems. I really like having the two different colors of greenery. I think it just makes it pop so much more. And then to add a pop of color, I'm using some of these berries. I just cut them down a little bit and then hot glued them to the inside of my bucket. To add some detail to the outside of my bucket, I thought it would be really pretty to add some of this ribbon from Dollar General. I've been using this ribbon a lot. I think it is perfect for farmhouse decor. I just cut that ribbon down to size to fit around my bucket and then hot glued the two ends together. And for the very last step, I'm using a double piece of jute to wrap around the top handle of the bucket and then making a hanger out of my jute. This is my mini bucket ornament all finished and placed on my tree. This was super simple to make, only took a few minutes, and this one screams farmhouse to me. For ornament number 5, I'm making a wood slice ornament. And for this one, I picked up a pack of wood slices at Hobby Lobby, and I'm only going to be showing you how to do one of them, so I'm just using one wood slice for this one. I'm starting by painting the inside portion of the wood slice with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and then for around the edges, I used a smaller brush just so I could have more precise lines. Once the paint was all dry, I'm then going to be using my stamps, and I'm using all capital letters, and I'm doing the word Noel. And I actually heard from some of the subscribers in my last video where I did stamps to start from the end of the word and work your way like towards the beginning of the word. So I gave that a try, and I did really like how it turned out. So thank you for everyone who suggested that. Then to make a hole in my ornament, I'm using my drill to drill a hole in the very top center so that I can have placement for a hanger. Then for my hanger, I'm taking a piece of jute and I'm stringing it through that hole that I just drilled, and then I'm tying a knot at the very top of my wood slice. I'm then adding a large wood bead to that piece of jute, and then I'm taking that bead and I'm pushing it all the way down right next to that knot. Then tying a knot at the very top of my wood bead to hold it into place, and then just making my jute pieces for my hanger the length that I want. To add a little bit of detail to this ornament and add a pop of color, I'm using some of this red and black checked ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I'm just making a really simple bow out of the ribbon, and then for the ends of the ribbon, I did cut them in a diagonal shape, and then I'm hot gluing that ribbon right over top of my wood bead. And this is the wood slice ornament all finished. With this, you can make so many different ones with different words and different colored ribbon to go with whatever theme that you have in your home for Christmas. For ornament number 6, I'm making a embroidery hoop trees ornament. For this one, I'm using a 3-inch embroidery hoop from Michaels, and I'm first starting by taking the embroidery hoop apart. I'm then using some of these mini trees that I picked up from Dollar Tree. I'm just seeing where I want to place them, and then once I have that figured out, I'm hot gluing the very base of the trees on the inside of the inner ring of my embroidery hoop. Next, I'm taking some of this ribbon, once again from Dollar General. You guys will see me use this a lot. I'm cutting that down to where I can have it looped around the very top portion of my embroidery hoop above my trees. And then I'm putting my 2 embroidery hoops together, pulling that ribbon really tight, and then screwing the screw on the top of the embroidery hoop very tight so that my ribbon stays into place. I then flipped over my ornament and I'm cutting off those extra long pieces of ribbon so that it looks nice and neat. Next, I'm taking some of these wood beads that spell out the word snow and I'm stringing them onto a piece of jute. I'm going to have this word going across the ribbon on the top of my ornament. And to hold the word snow into place on my piece of jute, I'm tying a knot around the letter S, and then I'm tying a knot right at the end of the letter W. Once I have that all in placement, and then I'm actually taking my embroidery hoop apart. I wish I would have attached my little jute pieces on top of my ribbon earlier before I put my ribbon in, but I didn't think about it then, so I'm doing it now. So I just had to take it apart and then re-put it back together with my pieces of jute going through the hoop. Then for my hanger, I'm adding a double piece of jute and I'm stringing it through that top screw on top of the embroidery hoop and then just making my hanger for the length that I want it to be. Here is my embroidery hoop trees ornament all finished. Again, super easy, and I've been using a lot of these 3-inch embroidery hoops for ornaments this year. They are the perfect size and you can really do so much with them. For ornament number 7, I'm making a wood blocks ornament. The wood blocks that I'm using are the Tumbling Tower game blocks from Dollar Tree. I'm using 5 of them for this project and I'm painting them with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and I only did 1 coat of paint on each one of my blocks. I'm then using hot glue to attach all of the blocks together. I'm doing 3 of them going in one direction and then I'm using 1 in the opposite direction on each side. Next, I'm making a mini wreath to go right in the center of all of my blocks. To make it, I'm using some of this green trim, and I picked this up at Hobby Lobby over where you would get all of your ribbon. So once I have my little wreath formed, I'm then using some of this berry garland from Dollar Tree, and I'm wrapping this around my entire wreath. As you'll see here in a minute, I ended up not really liking the berries on it. I thought maybe they were too big for this mini wreath, but I did really like the contrast of like the brown twine wrapped around the wreath. So I ended up just cutting off all of the berries and leaving that twine around the wreath. In this project, I'm also using one of these unfinished wooden stars. These stars did come in a pack of stars and I picked them up at Hobby Lobby. I'm painting mine with my folk art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red. Once the paint completely dried, I then placed hot glue on the back of it and then glued it right in the center of all of my wood blocks. Then I'm going to be adding my wreath. So I'm putting hot glue on the back side of my wreath and then just placing that in the center of my wood blocks going around my star. Then to add some embellishments on the sides of my ornament, I'm using some of these brass colored push pins, also from Hobby Lobby. And since the wood on these tumbling game block pieces are really soft, I'm able to just push the push pins in with my fingers and I didn't have to hammer them in. So I did 3 of them on each side. Once I had those all pressed in, then I'm using the jute to create my hanger. I just cut it to the size that I wanted, did 2 knots on each end of the jute, and then hot glued those sides or those ends on the back side of my ornament. Here is my wood blocks ornament all finished. This one was super easy to do, just like all of the other ornaments in today's video. And I really love the different elements on this ornament. You have the greenery, the pop of red, and that brass really brings everything together. And now for the 8th and final ornament today, I'm making a wooden beads ornament. I'm first starting by using these wooden beads that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. These did come in a pack with a bunch of different sizes. Then I'm taking a piece of jute and I'm stringing 2 of the smaller beads onto the piece of jute, and the 2 beads are the same size. Then I'm stringing a bead that's a little bit larger than the smaller 2 onto that same piece of jute. Then I'm taking an even larger bead and stringing that onto the same piece of jute. Then I'm just going to taper the beads down, going from a little bit smaller than the middle bead and then doing the 2 smallest beads after that. Once I have the beads on, I really didn't like how long it was, so I took a bead off of each end of my piece of jute. Then to keep the beads all in one place and not have them moving around, I just tied off the jute with a knot on each end of my beads. To create my hanger for this ornament, using that same piece of jute, I just looped it around and then tied off a knot so that I have a loop so I can hang it on my tree. I did want to add a little bit of a pop of color to this ornament. I know I've seen a lot of these wood bead ornaments just like this with no bows, but I like color. So I'm using this Dollar Tree ribbon and I'm making a really simple bow. And then I'm just using some hot glue to attach the bow to the very top bead on my ornament. And this is my wood bead ornament all finished. Probably the easiest ornament in today's video. I've seen tons of these wooden bead ornaments everywhere pretty much. They are so simple and inexpensive to make and goes great with farmhouse decor. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it. It really helps out my channel. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. And please be sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. I would love to hear in the comments down below which ornament from today's video is your favorite, and also what kinds of videos are you guys wanting to see from me coming here in the new year. Since we're kind of tapering off for this year, I want to see what you guys are interested in for the new year. Thank you so much for watching.